配套，九龍東係唔可能成為一個新嘅商業中心。主席，我謹此陳辭，請局長要認真考慮呢啲問題。多謝主席。
郭家麒議員，
主席真係唏噓啦即係當我哋講緊呢個施政報告嘅時候呢，就幾大嘅候選人就喺度講緊宏圖大計，其中一樣嘢係講房屋。咁啊，梁振英又好叻㗎，喺幾年前就係用呢一個重中之重嘅房屋政策呢，就冧掂好多香港人，就話佢可以解決呢個問題。譬如喺佢個當時就講話香港唔係冇地，係好多地喺度曬太陽，棕地要加快用，又講過呢，提高住人均嘅住屋嘅面積，甚至呢，非長者一人申請個公屋輪候呢要3年，5年過咗去。公屋呢就係由2012年嘅2.6年去到而家啱啱公布嘅數字4.7年。2016年嘅到2016年落成嘅公屋單位係51,373，距離目標爭24,000。私營市場嘅價格呢就喺梁振英任內升咗44.8%，當時係中原指數100.6，而家係144.91。咁啊，政府一定話係冇地冇樓㗎，咁你某程度上呢都啱㗎，因為政府揸個土地係好少。政府而家個土地呢，根據統計呢，如果係起到以700尺嘅單位為例呢，就可以起到122000，即係政府嘅土地庫。不過5大發展商再加埋港鐵，加埋就有47萬個單位。如果啲單位係450尺嘅呢，佢哋加埋74萬個單位。以恒基為例，政府就隨住政府嘅東北發展同埋新界西嘅發展呢，其實呢啲地產商呢已經早着先機嘅。淨係呢幾年，恒基購入同埋新鴻基購入5年啊，購入嘅地呢係可以起71個大球場。恒基喺香港有4500萬平方尺，新鴻基就係3000萬平方尺。我想講呢一啲嘅例子，即係話政府唔係冇地，講嘅所謂點樣要起東大嶼啊，或者好多要拎走嗰啲，包括講緊嘅郊野公園呢，其實係轉移視線、偷換概念。如果政府係肯面對呢一啲囤積嘅土地，係用政策上，包括係要處罰呢一啲嘅土地，如果佢哋係改變農地係冇用嘅，將佢還原，甚至係將啲土地呢係要發展成為收地成為公屋或者係居屋，點解唔做？其實政府同發展商呢係跳緊一啲探窩，高地價政策係政府做唔講嘅嘢，亦都配合好多嘅北水嚟。最近啟德嘅幾幅發展地就係一啲大陸嚟嘅，係國企嚟，係炒到呢係破紀錄嘅天價，政府係唔會理，因為事實上呢一啲嘅做法，可能亦都係政府係最容易呢去解決財政收入嘅一個方法，懶理你普通市民去死。所以5年內嘅劏房嘅數字係已經去到超過87000人，87000戶係住咗接近20萬人，劏房面積係132.9，價錢係幾多呢？平均嘅劏房價係4094蚊。呢個政府不斷係講大話，不過最令我哋擔心嘅就係而家啲特首嘅候選人，包括而家呢個689 2.0嘅林鄭呢，已經有幾大地產商呢，同埋啲大地主呢出嚟係要支持佢。所以我哋話要解決呢個房屋問題呢，係凍過水、凍過冰，因為政府同埋地產商已經成為一個呢係共同嘅利益集團。政府亦都無力係對抗地產商嘅囤積，亦都更加冇意思咁做。再加上而家嘅地產商越嚟越多，已經係喺國內嚟嘅民企甚至國企，更加就唔可以觸動國企我哋中央政府嘅企業嘅利益。 另外呢，我就想講少少有關於電力。點解呢？因為每一次呢，當我哋嘅電力管制協議完嘅時候呢，就係呢個一屆嘅政府嘅差唔多要完結啦。今次都唔例外。政府嘅對手兩大嘅電力公司呢，係儲足彈藥，用晒所有人力物力同政府去周旋，去角力。但係而家嘅利潤管制協議呢，就係俾咗電力公司魔術棒，因為只要佢不斷增加個固定資產投資，包括係利用一啲新嘅能源嘅組合所需要嘅儲存啊、嗰啲通道啊等等呢，就可以一路賺到盡。亦都燃料帳呢，係一路呢係作為呢係對沖，令佢唔會減電費嘅最好嘅一個做法。所以要求政府改善房屋問題，或者要求政府改善呢個土地問題，佢除咗呢喺度噏一啲係不切實際嘅畫餅充飢嘅，或者係要大幅度呢一路繼續係掟啲錢落去做一啲嘅假大空工程以外呢，佢唔會答你。呢個就係政府，呢個就係政府還俾我哋呢5年嘅所謂房屋政策。本人謹此陳辭。
黃碧雲議員。
主席，喺呢個環節，我想講一講關於食水安全嘅問題。食水含鉛超標調查委員會舊年5月嘅時候發表咗報告，報告裏邊係提出咗17項建議，咁主要包括一、主動為所有公屋再安排食水測試，包括收集淨水嘅樣本；第二、檢討現行法例框架同埋規管嘅制度；三、設立獨立組織監察水務署嘅表現同埋水質；四、借鑑海外經驗制定水質標準；五、推行水安全計劃；同埋六、設計水喉安裝嘅登記發牌制度等等。咁喺呢啲嘅建議言猶在耳，尚待落實嘅時候呢，我哋喺4日之前呢，係睇到有報道係話九龍中有一啲翻修嘅工廠大廈係做完換喉工程之後呢，喺抽水板化驗係發現食水含鉛量係超出標準嘅。鉛水又嚟啦！今次經過我哋睇嘅報道呢，就話發現又係鉛空呢係含鉛嘅焊料造成。水務署呢就冇公佈到係九龍中邊一間工廠大廈，咁所以其實呢，同區嘅其他工廠大廈嗰啲人呢，其實都好擔心，亦都冇公佈究竟超標咗幾多，有幾多個水板驗咗出嚟之後發現超標，呢啲數據我哋完全唔知嘅。更加呢，我相信呢，政府係冇幫到喺呢間工廠大廈裏邊工作或者係生活嘅市民係檢驗血液有冇含鉛超標。主席，呢啲嘅事件呢，令我哋驚覺政府喺鉛水事件被揭發之後呢，你哋所採取嘅措施係未足以掃除公眾對於食水係咪含鉛呢一啲嘅疑慮嘅。究竟九龍中嘅呢一個工廠大廈係咪只係冰山一角呢？究竟仲有幾多新建嘅大廈、學校或者係私樓喺佢哋做維修或者新建造嘅工程，其實佢哋出嚟之後嘅水都會受到污染呢？我哋完全呢係冇呢啲嘅數據。公眾根本係唔知道究竟呢個措施係咪有效。如果政府已經採取嘅措施係足以保障食水安全、解決咗鉛水嘅問題嘅話呢，咁就冇理由係會再揾到係有食水含鉛超標嘅情況出現嘅。咁所以我好希望呢，政府呢係公開交代究竟當中發生咗乜嘢問題，點解仲會有水喉嘅工人係用一啲含鉛嘅焊料去做一啲食水喉嘅更換工程？究竟又係邊個買料俾佢哋？係買一啲含鉛嘅焊料俾佢哋做呢？咁成個過程，我哋而家都唔知道喺邊一個環節出咗問題。所以我好希望政府呢係公開啲、透明一啲， 等公眾理解究竟我哋嘅政策喺邊度仍然係有漏洞，究竟係邊一方面嘅問題呢？而家好明顯，而家係啲料有問題。第二，人有問題啦。點解啲人係會用一啲唔應該用嘅料去做呢啲工程呢？我相信仲有啲問題喺法例上邊，我哋未完善。而家嘅法例根本冇辦法杜絕呢啲問題嘅出現。咁所以民主黨一路講，我哋好需要盡快通過一條食水安全法，確保各方面嘅持份者喺處理水喉食水工程嘅時候，食水水喉嘅安裝工程嘅時候，係冇人係會喺認知不足嘅情況底下，或者佢有意魚目混珠，係令到食水安全呢係受到威脅。當然，我哋都需要確立一個世界嘅標準，係令我哋嘅水質把關上邊呢，我哋唔應該淪為第三世界國家。我哋只係唔使飲一啲好污糟邋遢嘅水，但係我哋會飲咗一啲重金屬。我哋睇到政府水務署做咗好多宣傳，叫我哋珍惜食水。我每次睇到之後呢，我都唔知想喊定想笑。你話我哋每一滴都應該要珍惜，我哋梗係應該要珍惜食水啦。但係水務署而家你又宣傳叫啲人，喂，你最好開水喉，夜晚即係瞓完覺，朝頭早起身開水喉，放翻2分鐘水先。如果你放長假期喺屋企嘅水喉冇用過呢，你再放多幾分鐘水，因為呢唔保證嗰啲喉管流出嚟嘅水呢係不含重金屬或者其他有毒嘅物質。咁你叫公眾點樣相信水務署可以做好把關呢？你叫佢珍惜食水，一滴都唔好嘥，嗰頭你又叫佢去放水，所以我係好心急，我係好希望政府係承諾嗱聲幫我哋搞掂呢條食水安全法。但係呢個原水調查報告由5月出版到而家，你哋都仲未認真咁去落實裏邊嘅建議喎，仲係話我再揾啲專家嚟傾下先，再去研究下咩叫標準先。喂，大佬啊，你拖幾耐啊？其中一項叫政府盡快再為公屋咧安排嗰個食水嘅測試，係抽靜止嘅水板。有幾難啊？叫你再翻去公屋嗰度抽一啲靜止嘅水板，你都要拖到話3月之後啦，過埋特首選舉先至搞啦，有冇搞錯啊？所以你喺度拖，你係俾唔到公眾一個誠意。政府咧就講就話我哋係會跟進我哋會全力跟進，但係我係睇到你係喺度全力拖延，仲好笑喎！今日我哋有運房局局長喺度，呢個咧係跨局嘅問題嚟嘅。運房局你哋一路過去都冇睇住自己公屋嗰度嗰啲興建嗰啲嘅水嘅問題，而家你知道有問題啦，好，你叫承建商更換晒呢11條原水屋邨嘅水喉，但係個問題就係你哋話呢，好，我哋換完啲喉之後呢，會再驗水嘅，但係我哋驗水抽水板嘅方法就係用翻我哋過去一路民主黨認為好有問題嘅方法，就係話你又再放2至5分鐘，然後先至攞嗰啲水啊嘛，再去化驗啊嘛，咁你係咪揾嚟做啊，揾嚟搞啊？根本就冇用。你既然要得承建商去換咗啲喉之後，你一定咧應該要抽水板，就係抽靜止嘅水板，咁你先至知道嗰啲喉管裏邊仲有冇污染物，污染到食水啊嘛？唔係喎，然後你哋戇居居嘅喎，運房局，你話水嘅嘢我哋唔識嘅喎，我哋所有嘅嘢係跟水務署嘅喎，水務署到而家為止都係用緊放水2至5分鐘先抽水板，咁你又盲目咁樣跟水務署，水務署就話我都唔知點喎，等國際專家先。咁你呢個政府咪失敗咯？我睇完呢啲咁嘅施政報告，我梗係唔識笑啦，我梗係想喊啦，因為喺我哋未發現之前，你又已經俾人踢爆，又有工廈啲水出咗問題啦。咁所以我好希望呢，政府唔係承諾話全力跟進，而係你自己政府咧應該出嚟講，就係話我哋一定會訂立食水安全法，我哋係會全速去進行，跟住呢個食水原水超標委員會提嘅建議呢，係會去落實執行。咁所以我好希望呢，運房局局長咧都係承諾，當換完呢啲喉之後，你抽頭啖水睇下嗰啲喉管有冇出現問題。主席，我哋關心食水安全，我哋嘅水源係除咗本地嘅水塘， 其實我哋好大部分嘅水係嚟自東江水。當然，我哋係好希望政府係能夠有措施咧，保護我哋本地嘅水源，增加我哋本地嘅水資源，然後亦都要密切監察東江水嘅水質嘅。水塘我哋仲有冇空間增加存水量？仲有冇機會開拓新嘅水塘？我哋能唔能夠回收多啲香港本身嘅水資源？海水化淡我哋知道我哋做緊嘅，但係其實根本上就唔夠。就算起完呢個海水化淡廠，嗰個每一日嘅供水量啊，都唔夠我哋香港因為喉管老化而漏走咗嘅食水嘅量。咁所以我哋睇到咧嘅情況就係，我哋根本上有一段好長時間係繼續要依賴東江水嘅。咁所以但係我喺呢度見唔到有咩措施，就係話政府咧會真係全力係增加本地嘅水資源，減少東江水嘅依賴。關於東江水嘅問題，我喺立法會裏面提出咗好多次，話要上去東江沿岸考察。本來一改再改嘅行程係2月要去嘅，臨時又改咯，而家去到4月啦。咁我希望呢個唔會一拖再拖，第3次又再改期。最近我哋亦都睇到一啲報道，係令人非常之擔心，就係話喺東江嘅近源頭嗰邊，又再出現呢係垃圾山嘅情況。啲垃圾係周圍堆填，唔單止家居垃圾，有建築垃圾。呢一個問題嚴重到呢係當地嘅縣政府啊、市政府啊，其實咧係自己解決唔到嘅。咁係咪佢自己包庇呢？我哋唔知道。有冇貪污嘅情況？係隻眼開隻眼閉，搞到啲垃圾周圍堆，違反咗佢哋自己內地嘅環境法規。咁但係個問題，最後要中央派人落到廣東去收拾呢個殘局，嗱聲清理翻啲垃圾，然後堆翻啲泥，係當冇事啦，動個牌話呢度唔准堆垃圾。因為呢啲咁樣嘅堆填啊，非法堆填係冇做防漏措施，佢嗰啲咁嘅垃圾汁、啲污染物係絕對有可能污染咗泥土、污染咗東江水，唔單止影響當地嘅居民，亦都會影響我哋香港人。咁雖然我哋話啲水落到嚟香港，我哋可以把關啦，可以濾水廠過濾啦，但事實上，究竟香港知唔知道原來東江沿岸有垃圾山呢？所以我好希望我哋去睇嘅考察行程呢，係沿岸多啲嘅資訊，我哋可以攞到，但係我哋都唔可能日日都喺上邊嘅。咁究竟東江水有冇一個通報嘅機制？係兩地嘅環境局、兩地嘅水務處會唔會交流情報？如果知道東江沿岸佢哋有人巡查，睇到附近係有一啲違規嘅化工廠又好、垃圾山又好，啲可以污染水源嘅嘢都好，係即刻會通報香港，等我哋知道。抑或我哋係蒙查查唔知㗎？等到有人爆出大件事，可能呢件事我唔知水務處知唔知，本地嘅環境局知唔知？如果我哋全部都係後知後覺嘅，市民又憑咩相信政府可以喺食水安全嘅問題上邊幫我哋可以及實東江水，同我哋做好食水安全嘅把關呢？所以主席，我講咁多嘢，我係希望新嘅發展局局長馬紹祥先生係可以能夠鼎力孭起咗保衞香港食水安全嘅責任，大膽進取一啲，加快食水安全立法嘅工作。
姚松炎議員，
唔該主席，我係就住施政報告裏邊有關土地、房屋、交通、環境同保育嘅方面呢，係提出我嘅意見嘅。第一，有關施政報告裏邊提到用土地作為冇監管嘅官商合作，我係提出反對嘅。施政報告提到西九文化管理局可以透過一種稱為建造、營運及移交，以下簡稱 BOT 嘅方式呢，去同私營嘅機構聯合發展喺西九嘅酒店、辦公室、住宅用地。我必須要指出，呢一種做法啊，係會讓西九文化管理局 可以繞過立法會嘅監管，亦都令到呢係冇辦法落實政府內部有關公司合營守則裏面嘅規定嘅，所以係一件非常危險嘅事情，係會完全失控。其實大家有留意最近西九故宮嘅事件啊，都一定會同意，其實整個西九管理局呢，喺去超支嘅問題上高，喺去黑箱作業嘅做法上高呢，已經係不得民心。市民係要求更高嘅透明度同埋更高嘅監察，但係好不幸喺施政報告呢，係倒行逆施，反而提出透過用呢一種冇監管嘅官商合作形式，讓西九管理局呢係可以透過呢個土地嘅收入同財團合作發展呢，去經營同埋去建造餘下嘅項目嘅。嗱，大家要回顧一下呢，其實大家應該記得，回歸之後呢，第一次提到將西九發展為文化區嘅時候啊，第一代嘅西九設計呢，當時政府就係提出將整塊40公頃嘅土地呢，係完全以 BOT 嘅形式係撥俾一個財團，當時仲搞咗好多展覽。但係因為民間啊係對用呢一種 BOT 嘅形式呢，有一個官商勾結嘅不滿，所以呢最終呢係政府決定放棄用呢一種形式去進行發展西九地區，所以先至有今日嘅西九管理局。政府更加係當時向立法會咧承諾咧係以一筆過撥款去注資西九管理局，作為興建整個區裏面嘅項目，而最後咧亦都得到立法會嘅批准咧，係已經批出咗全數216億元俾西九管理局作為發展整個項目嘅。當時政府亦都係承諾咧係會將西九文化區裏面有關商業、住宅、酒店嘅用地咧，係作公開出售，作為融資嘅安排嘅。嗱，但係事隔幾年之後，你會見到咧，而家西九管理局就話已經用晒啲錢啦，而且嚴重超支。咁但係佢又唔係嚟立法會咧重新申請超支嘅撥款喎，相反呢，喺西九故宮嘅事件上高咧，佢就向馬會要求捐款，而餘下音樂廳嘅建造成本咧，喺今次施政報告裏邊咧，就用 BOT 嘅形式咧作為注資嘅方法。嗱，咁換句話嚟講，其實就已經係繞過咗立法會嘅監管，亦都漠視咗當年民意反對以 BOT 形式集資發展西九嘅係決定。而嗰個216億本來就已經係包括晒呢啲項目，咁佢超支又冇辦法，佢唔嚟立法會再嚟申請撥款呢，咁就已經係冇辦法向佢問責。所以今次用 BOT 嘅形式呢，係絕不可取嘅。第二部分係有關房屋。梁振英上任之後呢，不斷都係話要增加土地供應嚟壓抑樓價，但係大家好清楚睇到，5年好快過去，不單止係冇辦法壓抑到樓價，反而樓價係越升越高，又再破咗香港嘅樓價紀錄，所以本質上就已經係完全不符合科學精神㗎啦。先講私樓啊，過去幾年不斷犧牲環境，見縫插針破壞綠化帶，只係為咗推高建屋量。運房局喺1月底公布2016年全年嘅私人樓宇落成量14600伙，按年增長29.2%。 全年私人樓宇施工量25,500伙，按年係大幅增加80%，創下咗2000年以嚟嘅按年最高紀錄，而且仲講到話未來3至4年間嘅潛在供應量再創高峰，達到94,000伙。嗱，如果係呢啲咁亮麗嘅數據啊，如果佢嘅理論係正確，供應增加係可以解決樓價上升嘅，早就已經可以壓抑樓價啦。但係大家睇下數字，樓價唔單止冇因為供應量嘅增加而回落，反而繼續上升。過去5年，每年香港都成為全球最難負擔房屋嘅城市。差餉物業估價署最新公布2016年12月嘅住宅價格指數再創新高，達到306.8，比2015年同期嘅285上升咗7%。大家要記住，呢一個數字係政府喺11月已經加辣之後嘅數字變化，清楚反映說明，即使你用埋新辣招，即使你所有嘅供應已經大幅上升，仍然無助壓抑樓價。好肯定，好明顯，方法係落錯藥。事實上，差唔多所有嘅經濟學者一致同意，香港嘅樓價高企，實際係因為全球嘅超低息、負實質利率導致熱錢泛濫有關。呢個係投資或者投機嘅需求，而唔係住屋嘅需求。所以落錯藥，其實只會進一步破壞環境，令到香港嘅宜居度進一步係更加差。其實要解決香港嘅房屋問題，真正嘅方法就係要將住屋權同埋投資權分開。我一直提倡用合作社房屋嘅計劃，令到市民可以選擇。如果佢係唔想投資投機喺房屋，佢唔需要賺，唔會蝕本，政府出地去出建築成本，唔會增加政府嘅建屋嘅融資承擔，讓市民真正可以安居樂業，而政府亦都唔怕因為房屋嘅建造成本而會拖垮政府嘅財務承擔。呢個先至係真正解決房屋問題嘅出路。今次喺施政報告，梁振英唔單止冇去用科學理解究竟點解樓價不斷上升，反而進一步係話研究郊野公園用地嚟建屋。其實香港現時嘅市區人口密度啊，已經達到每平方公里24,000人，係全世界市區人口密度其中一個最高嘅城市之一㗎啦。實際上咧，已經係令到香港越嚟越不宜居住。即使以平均人口密度咧，亦都達到每平方公里7,000人。所以咧，大家要諗清楚，當年我哋之所以用高密度發展嘅形式啊，係一種取捨嘅決定。我哋用高密度嘅市區發展換嚟嘅就係能夠保留到我哋較多嘅郊野公園。其實就好似喺一個屋苑，你既可以揀咧密質質嘅丁屋，亦都可以揀咧幾棟高樓咧換來中間嘅係優化綠化空間。如果而家貿然又話你之前大家共議好嘅寧願高密度換來嘅公共空間咧，而家又話有地方剩，不如又發展埋去啦。嗱，最尾咧其實就係一路蠶食大家嘅公共空間，令到香港越嚟越唔適宜居住嘅啫。第三方面係關於棕土嘅問題。其實棕土喺香港本來就係政府輸咗一場官司，叫新法案一手造成嘅問題。政府遲遲都冇去糾正自己嘅失誤，現時已經造成鄉郊嘅嚴重破壞。但係喺施政報告裏邊，只係提出以2年時間去進行棕地普查。 但係會因為呢2年嘅空窗期呢，我哋已經發現有大量嘅新界農地主呢係加快破壞農地，以先破壞後發展，期待2年之後政府嘅新政策呢可以獲益，變相呢就係鼓勵更多農地主現時加速去破壞新界嘅土地，而政府呢喺回覆我嘅書面質詢嘅時候呢，竟然係話佢哋唔準備去面對呢一個問題，變相任由新界嘅土地繼續被任意破壞。即使係我提出馬上進行凍結調查呢，政府回覆都係認為不可行。而事實上，英國嘅經驗呢，棕土優先嘅發展模式底下呢，其實已經係可以好快脆就已經解決到棕地嘅問題嘅。大家留意呢，其實根據生法案嘅判詞呢，只要證明到棕地作業係屬於令人厭惡嘅用途啊，其實就已經屬於違反地契條款，係可以採取阻止嘅行動嘅。而好明顯，現時有大量嘅棕地作業呢，都係污染泥土、污染空氣、污染河道嘅，所以其實政府係有責任去執行有關違反地契條款嘅行為嘅。而且農地不斷變成棕地咧，對生態環境係百害而無一利，影響香港嘅生物多樣性。而政府啱啱就係出咗文件咧，就係想確保香港嘅生物多樣性咧係得以改善，所以其實係背道而馳嘅。嗱，現行嘅機制咧冇辦法阻止農地變成棕地咧，係因為城市規劃條例裏面嘅漏洞，但係我哋到而家都未見到政府有任何嘅計劃咧，係去修訂城市規劃條例。事實上，政府喺2000年嘅時候係承諾過市民呢係會進行第2階段嘅諮詢，但係一拖再拖，已經17年都仲未落實，搞到而家呢，新界隨處都係泥頭山、石屎化嘅農地。政府嘅回覆係話沒有執管權，呢一種荒謬嘅現象呢，必須要馬上糾正。我會計劃提出私人草案修改城市規劃條例，希望重新回到有執管權嘅城市規劃狀況。多謝。
林卓廷議員。
主席，我想就交通政策發言，包括鐵路優先嘅政策同埋道路擠塞嘅問題。而家香港政府呢係以鐵路為優先作為個交通嘅重要政策。但係我哋發覺呢個鐵路優先嘅政策呢，近年呢似乎開始變質，變成傾斜於鐵路。呢種變質呢，甚至係趕絕咗好多其他嘅交通工具，包括巴士啦、小巴。當有新嘅鐵路線開通嘅時候，隨之而嚟嘅就係削減巴士同埋小巴嘅服務，令到基層嘅市民受好大嘅影響，亦都令到巴士同埋小巴而家唔再係鐵路嘅競爭者。現時鐵路系統每日已經超過500萬人次使用，佔公共交通嘅總運輸量接近42%。過分集中依賴鐵路服務呢，係會有危險嘅。鐵路嘅系統因事故延誤，例如有壞車啊或者其他嘅系統問題呢，乘客受到連鎖效應嘅影響，人數係數以萬計甚至數以十萬計嘅。好多時候因為一啲小嘅事故，就要令到一啲主要嘅車站呢要封閘啊，要做人流管制啊。如果小巴同埋小巴同埋巴士唔係削減得咁緊要，市民仲可以有選擇，可以有替代。所以我認為政府有必要重新檢討交通工具嘅政策，例如公共運輸策略研究、往後嘅措施等等，應該要加強返 巴士、小巴甚至渡輪嘅角色，作為一個重要嘅交通政策嘅一員，亦都係鐵路嘅競爭者，唔能夠過分依賴鐵路系統。第二方面，主席，我想講一講香港嘅道路擠塞嘅問題。而家香港嘅塞車咧越嚟越嚴重啊！主要係因為車輛嘅數目增長得非常之快，道路基建咧係追唔上。一到繁忙時間咧，塞車就好嚴重。就以北區為例，幾個主要嘅交匯處喺繁忙時間經常塞車，一塞1個鐘頭、2個鐘頭，喺偏遠地區嘅居民苦不堪言。如果有壞車等等造成嘅擠塞咧，更加嚴重。喺2014年交諮會公佈嘅香港道路交通擠塞研究報告就提到，當時早上繁忙時間，部分嘅路段行車嘅車速講緊係時速5公里，仲慢過行路啊！正如我頭先講啦，私家車數目增長係造成道路擠塞嘅主要原因。我哋睇返數據，06年1月私家車嘅數目係36萬架，去到今年嘅10月，呢個數目已經係超過492500架。領牌私家車平均嘅增長呢，係由06年10年期間增長3%，去到10到13年呢，個增長率就去到4.8%。喺呢個期間，143000個新增嘅牌照當中呢，私家車係佔92%。我哋認為呢，有必要制定一套長遠限制車輛增加嘅政策，同時呢，要確立返公共交通工具能夠有道路優先使用權嘅原則。最後主席，我亦都想借呢個機會呢，就同發展局局長再講一講。閣下同勞福局局長呢，亦都啱啱榮升啦。我亦都當面同局長講過，新界東北發展我明白係需要做嘅，但係你都要處理受影響嘅居民，尤其係喺古洞老人院一帶嘅住緊嘅院友，呢啲長者已經7老80，本身係希望喺嗰個院舍裏邊安享晚年，但係突如其來嘅東北發展令到佢哋寢食不安。我哋希望政府有關當局真係要考慮一下呢批老人家嘅福祉，亦都考慮到佢哋同現在經營者密不可分嘅關係，喺制定有關安置嘅政策嘅時間，係切實可行咁樣去令到呢啲老人家得以安心去搬去政府而家準備興建新嘅安老院舍大樓。多謝主席，本人謹此陳辭。
石禮謙議員。
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I shall be using 30 minutes of my allocated time to speak on the policy address as a whole. As the 2017 CE election is approaching, the public seems to be more interested in who will become the next chief executive than Mr. Leung's last policy address of his tenure. Is the relative cold shoulder given to this policy address alluding that people have already transferred their hopes to Mr. C.Y. Leung's successor? This might be lamentable, but from tackling our housing woes, fostering wealth creation to improve governance, this policy address, like Mr. C.Y. Leung's previous four, has no breakthroughs that could guide Hong Kong out of the economic stalemate and re-inject a sense of hope and confidence about creating a society of stability, prosperity, and social harmony that the general public will be able to live in peace and contentment in the foreseeable future. First, I'd like to talk about housing, the prime concern of our citizens and the top priority of the successive SAR government. Without a doubt, the current term government has made strenuous efforts in this area. Yet, what it has achieved still falls short of public expectations. It's rather sad, but they did try very hard. Concerning public housing, there are around 290,000 applicants on the waiting list for the public rental housing units, compared with 190 applicants in March 2012. There has been a surge of over 100,000 applicants since Mr. C.Y. Leung took office. The average waiting time of the general public rental housing applicants have also extended from 3 years of waiting to 4.7 years during the same period. The unresolved supply-demand mismatch of the public rental housing units has been one of the factors leading to the worsening situation. However, the crux of the problem might be attributed to the SAR government's confusing and overly aggressive measures. For example, allowing white farm buyers to purchase second-hand HOS flats have disrupted the secondary market of the home ownership scheme flats, which was originally designated for eligible green farm buyers. Consequently, the chance of public rental housing tenants purchasing HOS flats is reduced, which in turn affected the turnover of the public rental housing units. The housing ladder of public rental housing, home ownership scheme, and the private flats are, as a conventional means for citizens to improve their living conditions subject to their financial capability, has been impaired, sadly so. Mr. President, the provision of public housing is aimed to promote social harmony by allowing the needy to live in peace and contentment. Sadly, many public rental housing families are forced to split and relocate under the current policy of housing splitting as their younger family members have entered the job market when increased family income make such families fail the means test. Consequently, elderly family members of these PRH tenants are forced to live alone. This is inconsiderate and inconsistent with our Chinese traditions such as respect of family values and filial piety. While the government's elderly policy highlights aging in the community and continuum of care, both the policy of house splitting for tackling the under-occupation and the policy of well-off tenants have been undermining the said Chinese tradition as well as causing inconvenience to people's daily life, creating social disharmony and not for the purpose of harmony. Although these far from people-oriented policies might help the housing society to embellish its figures on public rental housing units available for the public rental housing applicants for private housing. Over the past few years, the government have introduced measures to curb the surging property prices, the 辣椒. However, low global interest rates, imbalance between supply and demand for private flats, and high construction costs keep driving up our property prices despite the government's interferences. This major setback exposes the government's lack of understanding of the property market as well as its incompetence from SSD to BSD, DSD, and the latest increase in AVD rates. Each time a cooling period was created with a slight drop in property prices and a sharp reduction in property transactions in the second-hand market. But the effort becomes shorter and shorter. The strong rebound of property prices after each of these interventions reflected The resilience of the market is not subject to government control. You cannot control the market. Its harsh measures have undermined the self-adjusting mechanism of the property market. Market is the only solution to stabilize property prices and restore the balance between supply and demand of residential properties. An active property market free from unnecessary interference will reflect the true state rather than a distorted picture of market demand and property prices. Government primary objective of its housing policy is not to help every individual to purchase a home. The government must make an effort to ensure that they spare no efforts to satisfy the housing needs of the grassroots and the lower middle class by constructing more rental housing and HOS flats in a more expeditious manner. Private housing should be left to the invisible hand of the market with minimum interference. What the government should do is to ensure proper planning and steady land supply with a view of satisfying the housing needs of the people from the various social strata. However, this is easier said than done. Mr. President, it is a shame that the SAR government has still embraced the mentality of the 70s and 80s to formulate its strategy on planning and land development today. My fellow lawmakers in their absentees, we are now in the 21st century, but our land use planning is not commensurate with what a developed city should be like. Hong Kong should improve its planning. For example, the composition of the Town Planning Board needs to be reformed drastically. The current arrangement of both the chairman and vice chairman of the Town Planning Board are government officials is unpalatable. Town planning ordinance need to be amended so that a non-official representative, instead of the director of planning, shall be appointed as vice chairman, etc., to ensure adequate consideration of innovative approaches to planning and development. If the government is not going to do this, within this 4 years, I will be trying to move that the Town Planning Board should be given a different review. Urban renewal, on the other hand, is conducted on a project basis without adequate consideration of the cohesiveness and harmony of the local community. As a result, urban renewal projects very often fail to improve the overall living conditions of old urban districts. On the contrary, many old urban districts have been brutally segregated and demolished. Local communities are destroyed since rentals and property prices have escalated follow the urban renewal, just like the public rental housing tenants that they were deprived of affordable market after the link have been taken over all this government's property. The SAR government has only focused on increasing land supply, but failed desperately to consider the long-term and healthy development of the city as a coherent whole. The accusation of blindly usurping the land is not simply about how the government overlooks the need for the public space and better air quality. It is the irreversible malpractice of the government which neglects urban layout and hampers quality of living and convenience of the people, as it has been hopelessly conservative and bureaucratic. The SAR government must put a stop to destructive patterns of thinking in planning and urban renewal. Mr. President, persistent well-being of a city and its people hinges on sustainable economic development of the city. Therefore, wealth creation must be the primary concern of the government. To our dismay, the CE's last policy address, like his previous four, have failed to address this issue adequately. whilst the CE stressed on the National 13 five-year plan and the Belt and Road expresses his good intention of promoting economic growth and health for the long term, wealth creation for the short to medium term, which has been most relishing, is again left blank or put on a back burner. Conversely, Mr. C.Y. Leung setting a hard target on settling the working hour policy and the MPF offsetting mechanism within this term of the government would risk putting the next CE in danger of being a lame duck in those areas almost from the start of the next administration. If meeting the hard target results in rigidity, while rubbing salt into the wound of our business environment, particularly SME, which has been deteriorating in the recent year, it's time that the 4 candidates for the next CE election should put this subject as their top economic policy. Perhaps Mr. C.Y. Leung banks on the concept of reindustrialization. However, it is unlikely to be realized in the short to medium term. In the opening sentence, Mr. President, of the policy address, paragraph 54, Mr. C.Y. Leung said, "Innovation and technology are no slogan, but is reindustrialization itself just another slogan, like Mr. Tong's developing Hong Kong as a Chinese medicine hub, a flash flower port, and a cyber port. This worry is not baseless, as no concrete plans and targets are provided about how to materialize reindustrialization. Moreover, we are ill-prepared to implement reindustrialization, by which the CE hopes to foster smart production and technology research and development in Hong Kong, because Hong Kong lacks not only a pool of talents for reindustrialization, but also our education system to nurture such talents." Mr. President, a recent report of the Academy of Science of Hong Kong reveals that since the implementation of the current Diploma for Secondary Education in Hong Kong, HKDSE, fewer students have enrolled in STEM-related subjects, science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, and many high-performing students opted to study medicine, business, or law at universities. As a result, Faculty of Science and Engineering has relatively more difficulty in admitting students with good academic results. If this trend sustains, it is doubtful that the development of innovative and technology industry and the concept of reindustrialization will bear fruits. When it comes to education, although our education expenses continue to rise year after year, our education system remains problem-ridden. The problem lies in the officials in charge of our education policy. We should have Anthony to be the head of that, because he has the experience, he has been teaching, and he has been a chancellor. They have neither vision nor mission as mere pseudo-educationists who know little about the essence of education, which is about nurturing all-round educated people that will suit the needs of a modern, knowledge-based society. The SAR government should treat education spending not as an expenditure, but as an important investment in nurturing human capital for generating a perpetual stream of future income for the sustainability of the city. Education is not about achieving various benchmarks. Education is about unleashing every individual's potential. Education process should not be an endless ordeal of drilling. It should be a challenging exploration of uncharted waters, of knowledge in education. Mr. President, sky is the limit. With this in mind, neither the TSA, the territory-wide system assessment, nor its recently modified version of basic competency assessment, BCA, serve any meaningful purpose in education sense. Given BCA will continue to be a device only for Education Bureau to rank primary schools and secondary schools, this will drag schools, parents, and students in endless loop of drilling. Such practice must be discontinued. I'd like to touch on the surplus. Thanks to the former FS for his 9.5 years of hard work to build up a fiscal reserve of over $900 billion. And this probably will enable the next government to take a more proactive approach to mitigate the underinvestment problem in education, to lower teacher-student ratio in secondary schools, to expand the number of subsidized places each year to admit more eligible qualified students to the undergrad programs. At the moment, since 1997, the admission of secondary school students to the 8 universities have not increased and stay at 15,000, whereas every year we have approximately 22,000. 7,000 are left without places. And we should also build more student hostels. At the moment, there are 8,600 flat hostel places, a major problem. And this actually prevents us from taking any overseas student. And review funding of we should also carry out a review funding methods of the UGC to foster internationalism of local universities, to develop Chinese as a second language curriculum for non-Chinese speaking students, to cater for the non-Chinese speaking needs. These are just a few of the important issues that the government has done little to address properly. Mr. President, while education attainment is important in a knowledge-based society, education attainment is not everything. While we used to be complaining about Hong Kong's economic structure for its lack in diversity, the construction industry's underachievers with an alternative path to climb up the socio-economic ladder. Nevertheless, under the influence of our education system and traditional beliefs, young people are reluctant to enter into the construction industries, as parents and their children have a general obsession that only become a professional like doctor, lawyer, banker will provide them with more promising and secure future. Such obsession kills the potential and possibilities of our younger generation and imposes a limit on the development of human capital to certain industry only. Now I turn to the shortage of labor, particularly in the construction industry. In this year's policies address, CE stated that whilst the land price is rising and rising, that is unacceptable. But then he further stated that the construction cost has gone up but is acceptable. To Mr. CE, I beg to differ. As the cost per square foot of the construction cost per square foot have risen from 3,000 to 5,000 during the period of the last 4 years. And this, every dollar increase will be reflected in the price of our flats. Kokake was complaining about developers buying land. What's the problem with developers buying land as long as they are legal and transparent? Similarly, it's nothing wrong when he actually sees patients. It's just like a different way of making a business. But the problem with our rising prices in flats is because of the greediness of government. This high land policy, price policy. Like in every transaction, the government wants the highest. And the developers are only there with a high price land policy. We can only produce with rising construction costs what we can make little profit out of it. So I hope that Kokake should understand this. If we have a problem understanding a simple issue like this, he can talk to me. I'm very happy to talk to him and convince him. The current supplementary labour scheme is not up to scratch, as has indicated in his 2016 policy address. The CE said the government will review the effectiveness of the enhancement measure under the supplementary labour scheme to ensure sustainable development of construction industry. Mr. CE, the construction industry and I have been longing for your favourable reply. We are very short of labour. Just look at the express rail. One of the major problems that they have encountered is the shortage of labour. Look at Singapore, look at Macau, how they have resolved the problem of development. They imported labour. And look at Singapore. They have, basically, they have as many imported labour as the population. And they contribute towards the growth of the GDP and its economy. Mr. President, in an affluent society like Hong Kong, building up a caring society is not incompatible with stress on economic development. In a caring society should be distinguished from indiscriminate welfarism, which tends to sap individual responsibility and incentive to work, and resulting the erosion of public purse. Building up a caring society should be viewed as a reflection of the government respect of humanity that an advanced economy should always emphasize. It is unacceptable for government to allow 4,000 to 5,000 elderly citizens to die every year while on the waiting list for a place in a subsidized nursing home. This is a shame to a society like us. The SAR government should take a more proactive approach to building more subsidized residential care homes and allocating more resources to offer timely care for the socially disadvantaged, such as the elderly and the mentally challenged. Particularly, the efforts should be stepped up to train local caretakers and to speed up importation of labour to fill the manpower gap of the sector. With a view to improving the service quality of this care home and allowing the elderly and the disadvantaged to live and die with dignity. Mr. President, notwithstanding the efforts of the Chief Executive and this administration over the past 4 years, little progress has been made in resolving Hong Kong's deep-seated conflicts. In short, the problems can be boiled down to the problems of governance, as I have indicated so many times in our PAC report. The weakest link, I consider, lies in the incompetence of the administration and the self-conceitedness of some of our top officials. Arguably, the current term government is the worst in the history of SAR as far as handling executive-legislative relationship is concerned. Communication between the administration and the council is apparently insufficient. Not to mention lobbying with the opposition camp. The administration have even failed to communicate and collaborate with the pro-establishment camp effectively. Very often, officials of the incumbent government take it for granted that we, the pro-establishment lawmakers, must support the SAR government and toe its line. Bureaus and departments, on the other hand, lack cooperation and coordination as exposed in the Wangzhou saga, the Leadwaters incident, the joint consultation of the SFC and the Hong Kong Exchange about the proposed reform of the Hong Kong listing policy, the handling of the vacant school premises, to name just a few. It seems that the officials' daily practice is to strict duty and its responsibility and mind their own business and assume responsibility only for matters concerning their own policy area. How could it be possible for a government to achieve good governance under bureaucracy like this? Before the handover, Hong Kong used to have very little, if not zero, policy risk, in that the colonial government championed watertight policy planning, the rule of law, free market principle, a level playing field. A business friendly environment, etc. When government policies or initiatives were deviant from these core values, the government of the day would offer a unanimous tone of explanation to convince the public and minimize the impacts on investors and the society. They have helped the colonial government to create a general perception that the government seemed fair, open, reasonable, and predictable. Arguably, things have become more complex today with the advancement of information technology around the legislators' members that the government today could hardly use its clout to influence public opinions on issues of major concern. But what makes matters worse is the SAR government even failed to offer a unanimous tone of explanation most of the time. When it's come to putting forward government policy and funding proposals, while the opposition destructive filibusters in recent years must be condemned and condemned seriously, that they have actually affected Hong Kong well-being. Ill-prepared officials who tend to answer the legislature queries in drips and drabs manner are equally reproachable. In politics, perception is everything. If the CE policy makers and the officials are confused and fail to convince themselves, how could the public and investor be convinced of the SAR government is fair, open, reasonable, and predictable? Mr. President, the looming policy risks have been undermining Hong Kong as Asia's world city and as an international financial center. Nonetheless, despite Mr. C.Y. Leung's verbosity, his last policy address, being the longest one since the handover, lacks practical antidote to this menace, which should be first dealt with by getting rid of bureaucracy and improved governance. Some people said that the next CE should be one who is capable of helping the government to put out the fire. A metaphor means to resolve controversies, disputes, conflicts. Nevertheless, as the adage goes, prevention is always better than cure. Why didn't the government take every precaution to prevent fire in the first place instead of allowing fire set by the government itself times and times again? So the ultimate solution lies in tackling the deep-seated bureaucracy that have been taking root in the SAR government over the past 2 decades. It will be a considerable time to get rid of bureaucracy. A smooth transition is necessary for facilitating the next administration to handle this task. Rather than running against the clock to try to achieve as many things as possible that could risk creating more problems for the next administration, Mr. CE should, in the twilight of his tenure, devoted to alleviating and resolving disputes and conflict. Mr. President, we can lose confidence, but we cannot lose hope. Hopefully, the concept of one country, two systems, and high degree of autonomy and people governing Hong Kong enshrined in the Basic Law shall protect us from the depletion of hope, provided that we uphold the Basic Law and our core values. Thank you, Mr. President.
會議現在暫停，明天9點鐘續會。